Okay, so here's what happened. I noticed that Guilia F. Massaglia, one of my favourite tarot illustrators, had brought out a new deck on Lo Scarabeo, and here it is, the Egyptian Art Nouveau Tarot. And who could resist, quite frankly? I'm a big fan of this kind of style of illustration. I got my deck in the post and I paid good money for it, as you know. It's not expensive, but I do pay for my own decks. And the particular copy that I've got has got a printing error on it. Some of the cards have got a little bit of a blotch on them. So I'm in the process of trying to send it back. I've contacted the seller on eBay and I've contacted the seller direct. And it's a bit like getting blood out of a stone. And I wonder, is it worth it? We don't know, ladies and gentlemen. But while I'm waiting for a result, I'm going to give you a review and flip through of this very nice thing. Okay, so here's a box. Two of the best images in the deck on the box. Here's the back. Here's the little white book, and it's quite fun, the little white book. It's got some rather lightweight stuff about Egyptian gods. The magician is meant to be Heka, and it says, Heka, thou are the god form of magic. Heed my call and aid me, blah, blah, blah. The high priestess Isis, she who heals, etc. Fair enough. The empress, I call you Nephti, the goddess of childbirth, blah, blah, blah. The emperor prays to mighty Sobek. So this is all quite lightweight. It's sort of on the level of a Christmas cracker, but we know that. I like the designer of this deck. I like her work, Guilia F. Massaglia. Here's the Art Nouveau deck. I thought this was a very good deck, except it's the golden Art Nouveau deck. It was slightly spoilt by being sort of overloaded with gold, sort of stacks of gold in the background. And I mean, Guilia Massaglia's images are a bit busy. I think they're too full, but this deck kind of works, and I do use it for divination. It's big and it's bold, and it's brash, and it's luxurious, and it's opulent, and it is a certain flavour of tarot. So sure, I was excited by this deck. It's the same artist, and Egyptian Art Nouveau, what's not to like? Tarot does not come from ancient Egypt, but it does come from the Renaissance, and it was designed by people or a person at a time when Egyptology was all the rage in Renaissance Italy. They loved Egyptian stuff. They hadn't decoded the hieroglyphs, so they didn't know what it meant, but they thought it looked great and it felt great, and they thought that there was a lot of magic lurking in there. So in a sense, tarot is inspired by ancient Egypt, and tarot major arcana cards are meant to function, in a sense, as hieroglyphics. Okay, fair enough. And so, Art Nouveau, very, very nice. Another style to work in. I like Art Nouveau, and I like this artist. But I look at this deck with and without its printing errors, and I think to myself, how is that going to help us to read tarot cards? And as you know, I'm someone who is basically interested in reading tarot cards, not really in collecting them or just in admiring the beautiful pictures. So I will start my so-called flip through, and as I flip through, I will tell you more about my second thoughts about this deck. So there's a fool, a female fool, very, very nice. What's not to like? A magician, so far so good. The major arcana are the best bit of this deck. And I think some of these images are truly magnificent. As I say, I love this lavish, sensual, sexy, melodramatic style, which I do associate with Italian graphics. I love Italy. I love Italians. That's a great image. Now, what I'm leading towards is that I feel that there's too much information in this deck. The cards are too loaded up with detail, and also you've got all the sort of the fussy stuff around the edges, which you get with Art Nouveau. I think these are fantastic sphinxes, aren't they? But my feeling is that in the major arcana, it's okay, fantastic. A slightly surprising hermit, which one could get used to. A truly glorious wheel, a truly glorious justice. And in fact, I think, having slept on it, I think that's the best card in the deck. I'm turning into a difficult reviewer, aren't I? I used to be terribly polite when I was new to YouTube and was always saying how beautiful everything was. But now I've become a bit, a bit franker. I think that's good. And I think that's fine. That's a death card that one could get used to. It's just that it's, as you will see, it's quite like the devil card in this deck. I'll put it to one side. An unusual temperance. Really looks quite androgynous, that one, quite hermaphrodite. And there's the devil. So you've got two rather similar monster deities there. Again, you could work with it. You could work with this major arcana, a lovely tower. I also do have something to say about the general sort of graphic approach here. It is exciting, comic strip style graphics are exciting. They're very 3D. They seem to refer to film, don't they? That you've got close-up things here. You've got a lovely sense of depth, a lavish, extravagant sense of depth. You've got horses cantering towards the camera, which you never had in the old days when illustration was simpler, like in Pamela Colman Smith's day. That I think is really surprising and really rather beautiful. Where you've got all the ancestors behind, up in the clouds behind you for the resurrection card. And then again, an unusual and rather exciting world card seems to be a pharaoh, maybe being mummified, maybe on his way into the afterlife. And I love it that you have four very different animals here. A crocodile, I guess that's an ibis, is it? And that looks like a hawk, and that looks like a dung beetle. Okay, so my point is that, in Egyptian hieroglyphics, everything's flat. And now you've got, as in this one, look, you've got it coming straight towards the camera. And I think in Pamela Colman Smith's deck, which for me is like the ground zero of modern tarot reading, I quite like that. You do have a certain flatness, which means that the cards, and I like that, the cards do work have a sort of iconic hieroglyphic function. Now, I think that's a sign of what's wrong with this deck, and that's a sign of why I would never use this deck to read with. Glorious though it is, that's a very busy image, and it's the four of battens, and here they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they're not immediately obvious. And there's a lot of stuff in the background. I mean, the city has really become busy. There's a barbecue going on here. And instead of discreetly dancing in the background, the people are rushing towards the camera as they in a sense need to do. Now, I don't think that's an iconic image. And then the 5 has the similar problem. 5 actually disastrously looks rather similar to the 4 because they have completely different meanings, don't they? But they both look like a crowd rushing towards the camera. The one thing in the favour of this one, well, I mean, 5 of battens struggle, it's kind of a bit more appropriate. And also that, you do have Freddie Mercury here, which is very welcome, isn't it, in any tarot card. And then there's a 6. And these are all beautiful images, but they are, I think, over full. And you can see, if you go to Guilia Massaglia's Instagram account, she publishes some of her line drawings. So you can see what these looked like before she coloured them in. And they looked, frankly, I want to say better. That's being a bit hard on the artist because they have been lovingly coloured in. I think that one kind of works. It's a bit more restful, isn't it? You've got the decorative elements, but they're not all crowding in, and you've got the structure, and that goes down on the table, and you see immediately 2 of cups. When I'm reading, I don't want to have to spend 5 seconds working out which card is which. I want to know immediately what's going on. So as I say, these cards do look more iconic when they're in black and white. And if you compare them to Pamela Coleman Smith's cards, and this is a Rider-Waite-Smith style deck, you know, they are better drawn, aren't they? But they don't have empty space for the eye to rest. They don't have large blocks of colour. That's really quite unnecessarily busy, isn't it? There's all this stuff happening. You know, there's stuff lying on the floor. It's just too much. And when you put these cards down on the table, I think that one is fairly iconic. When you put these cards down on the table, they all are in exactly the same colour palette, and it feels chaotic. That one's okay because there's much less happening in it. And this one is kind of okay. I criticise this one because you can't really see where the 4 swords are. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not clear. You could get used to this tarot and you could work with it, but I certainly probably won't be putting in that effort, you know, chasing this tarot around, trying to get used to it. There's too much. There are no clear blocks of colour. And I'll show you what I mean if you like. Tarots that I think work as tarots. Tarot cards were meant to be hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics were two-dimensional, were flat, were simple. And for me, tarot cards are like an alphabet, a bit like a Ouija board, and I use them to receive messages from the other side, ladies and gentlemen. That's nice because it's simple. When they're simple, they're lovely, and I feel a bit mean not being more enthusiastic about this deck because it is beautifully executed. But you see what I mean? They are all in the same kind of colour palette. There isn't very much variation in the skies. Whereas, you know, Pamela gave you yellow skies and blue skies and grey skies. And now we come to the court cards, some of which are nice, but some of which are problematic, as the Foucault people say, as the critical theory people say. Problematic, aren't they, sweetie? There's a problematic one because it's now so ornate, and it's not a figure leaping about on a horse, so you know it's a knight. So it's a figure sitting on a throne, and there's a king. It's so ornate, and there's so much stuff in it that you're going to have to pause and look around to see what family they belong to. Okay, there's batons. They belong to the batons family, but frankly, that baton is quite a minor detail in that sort of cascade of images. They're nice images, but they are too full for my liking. Nice page, a nice knight, and then again, king and queen. I think it might just be that the batons that are annoying me there, a king and a queen. But I do feel that, you know, you've got these kings and queens, and then you've got to deal with the emperor and the empress and the high priest and the high priestess. So all these authority figures are not really strongly differentiated, and you need them to be strongly differentiated. Okay, so let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is a bit unfair because it's a bit like comparing a writer to Shakespeare, isn't it? But I suppose my question is, you know, what is the point of all these hundreds of tarot decks that come out? I think that indie artists often have something kind of quirky to say, but these sort of mainstream decks that come out, they're pretty, but what good do they do us, you know? I prefer that one by a long chalk. I prefer that one by a long chalk. And let me show you something else. So there we have Pamela's 5 and Guilia Massaglia's Five of Batons. And as I say, this one does have the advantage of having Freddie Mercury in the foreground. But joking aside, I enjoy these blank coloured backgrounds that you get in the RWS. I enjoy it that the figures are a bit manageable, a bit further back, and I enjoy that you can really see the batons, okay? One more, then I'll stop torturing us all. This for me is more like a hieroglyphic. It's more instantly readable. I can see which card it is. And the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that buying another tarot deck or buying 10 more tarot decks won't make you into a better tarot reader. The way that you become a better tarot reader is to become intimately acquainted with these 78 cards and what they mean. And you need to have a good working, sort of a good holistic cluster of meanings in your mind attached to each card. You don't need to fuss around with changing the name of the emperor to some Egyptian god or the empress to Isis. I mean, yeah, that's a reference. But you need to know that the emperor means, for example, structure, and Isis, for example, means something that's hidden or whatever. You have to have this vocabulary up and running in your mind. And tarot is quite challenging to get it well. When you're really up and running, you will be kind of conscious channeling as you put the cards down. And for that to happen, it's got to be like riding a bicycle. Your mind has really got to be quite fluent with these images. So your mind has got a lot of work to do as these cards hit the table. It needs to recognize the card and get busy with the task of picking up intuitively some messages from the other side, ladies and gentlemen. So frankly, just get one of these. And it's very difficult to find a better tarot deck than this one. And I find it quite strange that Lo Scarabeo keeps on putting decks that aren't better. Okay, I'll shut up now. That was the Egyptian Art Nouveau Tarot by Guilia F. Massaglia, out now on Lo Scarabeo. Join me next week for more tarot tips, book reviews, deck reviews and stuff like that. Bye.